Hello, and welcome to Anime Audio Commentary. Today I'll be commenting on episode 15 of Outlaw Star. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So last we left off, Gene and company had to deal with a bunch of jewel thieves pretending to be terrorists. You know, they set up this big, elaborate plot, latching a gigantic bomb to the Outlaw Star to sort of get Haifong to be evacuated under the pretense that, you know, they wanted to be liberated or blown up, one or the other. And then in the confusion, they attempted to steal a bunch of jewels, and, you know, they sort of didn't really succeed in doing so. And then at the end of the previous episode, we got a little sneak peek of what we were going to be getting today, and it seems as though that there were going to be 7 assassins after Gene and the rest of the crew, although likely Gene specifically. And it seems as though now we're learning about them. You know, they're all sort of different and eclectic, but they're all at the beck and call of, you know, the pirate lords who really have it in for the Outlaw Star's crew. Seems like they mean serious business. So I'm sort of wondering what the inciting incident in this episode is going to be. Because it seems to me that if you're sending, like, the 7 most dangerous people after someone, there's got to be a reason for it. And I mean, it's not like there isn't reason enough for not liking Gene Starwind and the fact that he has the Outlaw Star under his command. But, you know, I don't know. It seems to me that there needs to be something extraordinary for this, you know, like, in Dragon Ball, Frieza was forced to cull in the Ginyu Forest because he ran out of other competent minions to help him, you know. I don't mean to say that this is like an equivalent sort of thing, but, you know, there are some overarching similarities. So here we have it, you know, from the, presumably the guy in charge here. It's like, look, you know, Gene Starwind is formidable, but you guys can take care of him, but, you know, there's stuff going on, ley lines, things like that, so, you know, hop to it quickly, otherwise things get dicey. So, I guess we kind of have it right from the horse's mouth, you know, there's stuff going on, mystically speaking, and, you know, there's probably no rational explanation for it or what it is or what's going on, but I don't know, like, I guess, Gene's gonna be in for it. Oh dear. So it seems like there will be no peace anywhere. Jean's suffering in part because of Aisha Clan being the stupid, noisy kid that she is. But, as horrible as all this is, I feel like dealing with the assassins is going to be that much worse. Yeah, despite all the noisiness and everything going on, there is still the overarching problem of just not having any money and having a bunch of debt. Aisha brings up the galactic ley line and the supposed treasure that it contains, but, I still have reservations about that just because, no one seems to know anything about it. And I feel like that means it's, at least in my mind, more likely that it's not a conventionally useful thing like money or, something intrinsically valuable like gold. Of course, all these petty problems kind of go out the window here with the introduction of these assassins. Now, this first guy here, he's obviously disguising himself for a reason, but I feel like he is merely going to be the most straightforward of all the assassins, he's just sort of challenging Jean to what appears to be a straightforward duel. However, I get the feeling this is going to be bait, saying look, I challenge you, we're gonna go here, there will be assassins lying in wait, and all that. Oh dear. Yeah, this guy is serious business if he can catch Jean off guard like that. I mean, Jean was right to be wary. Why would you call someone outside and then say, hey, let's settle things somewhere else? But, ooh, okay. So if the guy says, I'll make a name for myself by killing you, I get the feeling that he's actually kind of a no one, Yeah, it seems like things are gonna get a little bit more dangerous. Now that's interesting. The assassin says, I'll tell you stuff tomorrow if I'm still alive, which, I don't know. That seems to me that it's a pretty good indication he's not going to be alive. I guess it wouldn't be too surprising that some of the assassins would have something of a falling out with one another, especially if he isn't necessarily one of the 7. I don't know. I think it would be fairly plausible that he is, in essence, a decoy. So Jim's got the right idea here, I think, that, Jean's kind of unserious about this whole thing, especially when it's a matter of life and death. And, he doesn't say, hey, maybe you shouldn't go out drinking, but I'm certain that's kind of what everyone's thinking. And, Melfina has some confidence in him that he's tough and can take care of himself. However, I feel like toughness doesn't matter so much when you're dealing with assassins. The type of people who will, shoot to kill you and aren't particular about how they do it, I mean, the little introduction to the assassins in the beginning, it described one of them as being the sort to use feminine wiles to sort of transfix men and kill them that way. It didn't really go into much detail on how she kills them, but I feel like the method doesn't matter so much as long as she transfixes them. I guess I wouldn't be surprised if she was a poisoner or something like that, seeing as how Jean has a drink at the bar, and he, didn't leave it unattended per se, but he wasn't exactly watching it closely. Although that said, this newcomer at the bar, he wants to drink with Jean too, so, maybe he's a poisoner as well. I mean, Gene, like, he's just, like, generally a genial guy. Like, he's probably assuming this is just, like, you know, someone in a bar who wants to talk, but, I suppose he doesn't understand at this point that he's got a whole bunch of assassins after him, all of whom are very dangerous. Ooh. So, Jim is sort of, talking with Gilliam, looking into, you know, how this duel might eventually go down. And, like, it seems as though, like, everything's above board based on what he's saying, you know. I don't know if I believe that, but I guess the idea is that they wouldn't necessarily be ambushed on the ship because of its defenses. Oh dear. So, you know, oddly enough, I think Gene's life is in better hands away from Aisha's cooking. Like, that looks particularly atrocious, you know, even in anime where it's a sort of a running gag whereby someone will cook something absolutely disgusting and inedible. Like, that looks remarkably inedible. Oh dear. So Gene is now clearly drunk and broaching the topic of dueling and killing people and all that. I don't know, man. I think things are gonna get hairy pretty quickly, and it probably doesn't bode well that he's been drinking, you know? Yeah, you know, when you really start talking about life and death, saying, like, when you die, it's all over, like, I don't know. That's dangerous talk. So, the guy's just, like, getting up and leaving, but there's no guarantee that he's not gonna, like, turn around, pull out a gun, and take a shot at Gene. I mean, it wouldn't exactly be tactful and indicative of a master assassin, but I guess, well, I mean, he didn't do it, but it wouldn't have remarkably surprised me if he did. I guess all the assassins are just sort of biding their time and waiting for the actual duel to take place before they spring. It wouldn't be surprising, I guess. You know, Gene goes in thinking he's got one opponent, and then he might have 6 or 7 more, you know, unexpectedly. That's a real sticky situation to find oneself in. Although, speaking of sticky situations, you know, Melfina is getting involved with Gene probably not at the best time per se. And I guess, you know, she had some second thoughts about things. Wow. You know, that kind of came out of nowhere for Gene to just snap at her like that. I mean, like, I can get, you know, snapping at her if she's doing this hot and cold routine here, but saying, like, you know, what are you even here for? What were you made for? Like, is this part of your programming? Like, that's remarkably harsh. You know, it's a very cutting remark. Man, I hope he apologizes to her before the duel, you know? Oh dear. So it seems like that's it for Gene then. You know, he just got shot by, his opponent here. It's interesting that this guy sort of, mentions the topic of conversation from the bar. You know, it's like, look, I want to live, therefore I have to kill you. Oh, okay, never mind then. It was all a dream, I suppose. So, I guess understandably, Gene's, you know, contemplating his mortality. Because if he is going into a duel, a duel to the death is a real possibility, and I don't know, few people are cognizant, I guess, of where and when their death will be. And, for as uncomfortable as the uncertainty is, I feel like certainty isn't much better either. Because, Jean is well aware of the possibility that he may not return from this duel, but at the same time, there's a chance he could live, and, that has to give you some degree of clarity, Ooh, okay, so we've got Jim lying in wait here. While I don't think he's necessarily going to interfere, I wouldn't be surprised if he was primed to do something should the need arise. Although it seems like it won't be necessary right now. It seems like both people were struck by bullets, but Gene's gotten up and his opponent hasn't, so I'd say that, bodes well. Now, the interesting thing is that the guy, not quite dead, decided to blow himself up, then leave behind a pathetic corpse, as he put it. Okay, so the guy from the bar is one of the killers. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that Leilong here, one of the killers, didn't, take any opportunity to do anything. It seems to me that that's kind of a waste. Suppose he was scoping things out, as it were, fair enough to him, but I mean, Jean was, pretty plastered. That would have been a prime opportunity to do something. It's not exactly honorable, but, I don't know. I feel like when you are a killer, honor is a secondary thing. It tends to be the case in anime frequently where assassins are honorable people, but I feel like that need not be the case. Now, regardless of whether or not Leilong is honorable, the unfortunate thing for Jean is that for all his weaponry, Leilong seems to be better off, Oh dear. So Jean has made a fundamental mistake. He had Leilong in checkmate essentially, but rather than, pulling the trigger both literally and figuratively, he hesitated. And, I get having pause about killing someone, but when it's life or death, you gotta do what you gotta do regardless of how distasteful it might be. Ooh, so Leilong knows Melfina by name. So it's interesting that Melfina's even willing to risk her life for the sake of Jean. It's even more interesting that Leilong's like, look, no, I'm not gonna kill you, I can't kill you. So, Jean's gotta be fairly gratified that all of his friends are willing to stick up for him at a time like this. However, I feel like if things start going south again, if friends start dying, it's probably going to be small comfort. And I guess I spoke too soon. It seems like things are kind of going south. Aisha's been blown up. Presumably Jean's been stabbed. Suzuka will probably fare better than the others on account of being skilled and, not nearly as stupid. But Well, I take that back. I guess she went down pretty quickly. That's kind of disappointing. Oh dear. So we're in a unfortunate position whereby Jean is not really super capable of fighting, and Melfina's kind of, I guess a target, you know? Not to be killed, but I feel like, given that she is pivotal to all of this, seemingly, you know, I get the feeling that she's not going to be just left to wander off on her own after all this. So remarkably, Lei Long has decided to give Jean one more chance. You know, he gave him a gun. He has his gun. They're just gonna, you know, shoot at each other until one person's dead in, you know, traditional Old West fashion. Unfortunately, Jean seems remarkably shaky about all this. You know, likely to his detriment. So the question is this the end? You know, presumably he's been shot. He fell over. It's not a guarantee, but it's certainly not a good indication. Although, it seems like, at the very least, Jean also managed to shoot Lei Long. Oh. Okay, that's kind of interesting. So did Jean just fall over then? Because Lei Long, he said his gun malfunctioned, and that's why he lost, so... Huh. So it's kind of a bitter thing, you know? Because, like, I guess to have survived all this, but only due to luck rather than skill, like... I mean, it's nice that you're alive and all, but it's, kind of unfortunate to have survived merely due to luck and not due to skill. I mean, I can understand that, but, I mean, Jean's kind of like jumping to conclusions here, because it turns out everyone's actually still alive. It makes me wonder about Lei Long. Like, was he actually trying to kill them, or, what exactly was he doing? You know, I feel like it shouldn't have been too hard to kill them, or at least, you know, critically wound them. I don't know. That smacks of a little bit of monkey business here. I'm not exactly sure what Lei Long was playing at, but if nothing else, he's given Jean the knowledge that there are more assassins and they will be after him, and things are going to get interesting in rather short order. Okay, alright. So Lei Long isn't truly dead after all. You know, he just faked his death, presumably. What is this wacky character playing at? Well, okay. I guess he just wanted out of the business, so he faked his death. Fair play to him. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.